Well, I engaged some of the party supporters, especially of what they make regarding his engagement with the media yesterday. And for them, his first 100 days should be focused on what to do to ensure that young people get jobs to do. For now, the biggest challenge for them is that most of the young people come around looking for jobs, but they are not able to employ them because the system is not allowing them to do so. So he should focus on job creation for now. So here at the Christ Apostolic Church, he will engage with the clergy, traditional rulers. Then from there, he moves to the Abdesmo West constituency, where he will repeat the same things. He will engage traders and then residents of the area, and then end up with a community connect later in the evening.
All right. Thank you very much. Musa Lansa is my colleague who is following the Vice President's team on his tour of the Greater-Accra Region today. Let's still do some politics, but this time the camp of the NDC, because the flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama, has promised the distribution of free sanitary pads to girls in basic and senior high schools nationwide. Now, this initiative, the former president says, forms part of efforts the NDC plans to put in place to alleviate the current economic hardships Ghanaians are facing. This pledge follows public debates suggesting an elimination of import duty on imported sanitary pads.
There are many students who are unable to take up their places in tertiary educational institutions because they cannot afford to pay their academic user fees, the academic fees. And so we'll take that stress off them. For the first year, they will not be required to pay fees. And I assure the universities it will not affect their internal generated funds. We're going to give the money to the student's loan. The student loan will pay it to the universities as a grant. It will be paid as a grant, not as a loan. And aside from that, we're going to increase the subvention that goes to our public universities so that we can improve quality and learning in those universities. We will provide free tertiary education for all persons with disability. And we will provide free sanitary pads for girls in school.
Well, let's have a conversation on this. Shamim Muslim is gender advocate and also the spokesperson for the NDC manifesto team on gender issues. Shamima, thank you very much for your time. So we're not just going to focus on the distribution of pads for girls in basic and senior high schools. I want us to look at the promise of the NDC when it comes to gender issues. So two key things that we are picking up. The promise to distribute free sanitary pads and the establishment of the Women's Bank. But let's first tackle the free sanitary pads. Many will ask, why not just remove the taxes on these pads or subsidize it or buy the pads for those in communities where they cannot afford?
Right, thank you very much. As you know, with policies, there's always the overarching vision, and then there are the steps we will take to operationalize it in ways that is sustainable and sometimes gradual before we are able to fully remove the bottlenecks. So the immediate need now, even before you pass any legislation, you know that is also, it takes quite a lot of time. So the immediate need, we know every woman, every young girl in our basic school who is menstruating and in our, secondary schools who is menstruating, they can't wait. They need the sanitary pads like yesterday. It is an urgent call that various activists and activist organizations have made over the time to make sanitary materials affordable and accessible. You would know that in the previous NDC administration, giving pads to girls in schools was a project that was implemented, but it was criticized by the New Patriotic Party in opposition then. So our first step is to meet the immediate needs of these girls in school so they can come to school and stay in school and will not stay at home because of PAD. The second leg of the program is to now look comprehensively at the tax regime with regards, menstrual hygiene materials and the proposal to build a local manufacturing base that would make the cost of pads affordable across board. Even when we are able to do that, even when we're able to work in such a way that we reduce the price substantially by creating incentives for local businesses to produce locally and use other innovative alternatives. So as we speak, there are people who are already creating reusable parts, people who are pushing the cap system. So we have a variety of alternatives. Our vision is, how do we make it accessible and affordable? Our first response is to provide these parts directly to the girls in school so they are able to come to school and stay in school. That's the level with which you should see this first intervention. Yes.
So you say that the immediate need is to provide these girls in schools with pads. How about those who are not in school?
So unfortunately, there is a need to be able to identify people and then, give them interventions. Those who are not in school, we don't have a mechanism now to be able to coordinate and access them. It is also an incentive to get girls in school because girls must be in school. There's free universal basic education. Girls must be in school. It's an incentive to do that. So for those that are outside of the net of formality, where, the program can be more targeted and beneficial to them, because we also want to secure their educational outcomes, what we can do now is a second leg of it, looking at the comprehensive set of laws and taxes on these materials and work to reduce the cost so that those who are not in school would also be able to afford very subsidized, sanitary materials. That is the second leg of the initiative.
Okay, I have one more question for you on the sanitary pad issue. I mean, in terms of identification that you have talked about, Shamima, you are well aware that there are girls in schools whose parents can afford to buy them sanitary pads. How are you going to make sure that, because really the state does not have money to be engaging in continuously giving free things to people, how do you ensure that this program or this policy is well targeted so we are not actually, for the want of a better word, wasting money on people who can afford it?
It's a very legitimate issue, and in principle, people who can afford things should not take things. So sometimes when we speak about social interventions, always think first about the most vulnerable who are unable to afford at all. Think first about them, and then you would recognize that policies must be envisioned with only the most vulnerable in mind, but proclaimed to the understanding of all. This is the vision that we have. Let me, Alice Ayite from your station has done a lot of work on girls and their sanitary materials. When you go outside of Accra, when you visit majority of our rural communities, there's nothing like affordability. There are masses of young girls who cannot afford. There are reports of girls who have lost their virginity, who have become pregnant because they had to go to a man to get them a sanitary towel. So yes, once we come into power, we will put the necessary mechanisms in place. And if you're in school and you don't need a pad, you don't have to take it. You see, these are the principled issues we will be. If you're in school and you are able to afford, there's going to be some level of needs testing to ensure that the people who need it in every school, public basic school and secondary school, are giving these pad materials. There are girls in schools who even give their colleague pads because they are able to afford it. So that should not be our worry at all. Our worry should be, how do we ensure we meet the needs of the majority of our girls who are unable to afford menstrual hygiene materials and are living in period poverty?
All right, Shamima, let's move to the establishment of the Women's Bank. And I ask you, why is the NDC seeking to create another bureaucracy when we have MASLOC, which is supposed to be dealing with small and medium-scale enterprises, of which women are a major beneficiary of?
Well, the statistics don't show us that women are a major beneficiary of.
When I talk about that, I mean the small and medium enterprises. A huge chunk of them are women. That's what I mean by that.
So, right? So what I'm just saying to you now, you mentioned the vehicle of Maslow, and I'm saying that the Maslow that was envisioned then and the Maslow that we have today is at complete variance to meeting the needs, specific needs of our women folk. So, you know, once a proposal is made, it's because there's an identification of an existing gap and an identification of a need. And we have met almost every grouping you can think about, women groups across different levels doing different things. And their shared reality is that their micro, medium, small to scale enterprises have become more vulnerable today. Many women have lost their capital and are currently in very vulnerable situations because of the collapse of our micro savings and loan companies, many of whom were serving these same women in the market, in our communities, in our rural and some urban, locations. They have lost their capital. Susu men have run away with women's money. So there is a major need to directly target women also because, like you said, they form the majority of the informal economy, and they are the same people who have been pushed into poverty. The 850,000 Ghanaians who have been pushed into poverty, majority of them are women, they are the aged, and even children have been pushed into poverty as a result of the reckless mismanagement of the economy by the New Patriotic Party. So, because we need a resetting, it is incumbent on us to do targeting of the areas that have the most potential to transform the base of our economy. And it is the women in the small to medium scale enterprises. And even some big businesses would be able, women-run businesses who have access to capital. It's a major barrier for most of these women. Sometimes they need just 5,000, 10,000, some need 2,000 to just go and buy something and sell. Basic. So there's a need there. It is not another level of bureaucracy. It is a specific targeted need which we know. And I have spoken to a lot of my female colleagues in banking. Some of them are heading SME units within the bank. And they said that it is good business, that this is one of the most greatest intervention we could ever have thought about because they are working and they've seen that women pay their loans. That is why almost every commercial bank now is establishing a women's banking unit and an SME unit because these women actually, when they borrow, use the money for the purposes, with which they came for the loans, and they pay back. And they are able to grow and manage their businesses. They don't engage in profligate expenses. They manage because they know that they need to pay back this money to be able to build their business and care for their children and their parents and the elderly within their communities. Ghana Statistical Service tells us that there are more female-headed households in Ghana, which means that more women are the primary providers in their families, in their family units. So they are not looking for laissez. They're just looking to be able to work in a dignified way and earn income to provide the basic necessities for their families. And we are responding to that need.
All right, thank you very much, Shamima Muslim. She's a gender advocate and also the spokesperson for the NDC when it comes to gender issues. Let's stay on the NDC's manifesto because they are promising to introduce a new pension scheme for organized groups in Ghana's informal sector should they assume power come 2025. According to the flag bearer, John Dramani Mahama, his government will contribute a percentage on behalf of any group that participates in the new scheme. This initiative will allow Okada riders, commercial drivers, traders and others to save money for their sustainability in old age. The NDC flag bearer disclosed this at the party's manifesto launch over the weekend.
We'll introduce an Money Your Pension scheme so that persons in the informal sector who want to put something aside for their pension and their retirement can put 10 Ghana cedis a day, 5 Ghana cedis a week, 50 Ghana cedis a week. They will keep paying it so that when it gets to their turn for retirement, they have some money that they can rely on. We'll also, this pension scheme will cover commercial drivers and my dear Okada riders. They will also be part of the pension scheme. It will also be extended to small-scale miners, farmers, fishermen, traders, and market women, people who receive cash on daily basis. You put a little aside. If it's every week, you go and pay it into the money, or you can use your mobile phone and pay, and your account will keep being updated. So after 15 years, that money has been invested. When you are retiring, you have your pot of money so that you can be getting a pension every month in your old age.
Well, let's get a better understanding of how the scheme is supposed to play out. Joining me on the phone is Isaac Adongo. He's a spokesperson for the NDC when it comes to the economy. He's also the Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga, and he is the ranking member on the Finance Committee in Parliament. Thank you very much for your time, Honourable. So explain to us, in very layman's terms, how will this scheme play out?
Yes, thank you very much. We are aware that at the moment, the working class, particularly the informal sector, is not being properly covered in terms of their retirement. And it is also the reason that most funds that could be available to grow the capital base of our country and improve investment are not being tapped for national development. It is for this reason that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is proposing the establishment of a pension scheme which caters to the needs of the poor and underprivileged, and largely the informal sector. And the reason is what I have just explained, and our intention is to provide different levels of pension cover to meet the needs of these underserved group of people. And so in 2025, our vision is to establish a pension scheme that will cater to the needs of the underserved.
So how is it going to be like?
We will develop this as part of the general financial inclusion policy that we are implementing, which will seek to bring a lot of Ghanaians into the financial system. So you will be able to contribute to your scheme either on a weekly or monthly basis as your income would support, so that those funds are mobilized and invested in order to create a pool of funds that can be shared among pension holders, so that by the time you retire, your pension would have accumulated enough returns, and that can be calculated and provided to you as part of your social safety net, so that you can be able to go on retirement in peace and continue to receive benefits thereon.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us an insight into what this policy will be about. Isaac Adongo is Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga. He's the NDC spokesperson on the economy for their manifesto, and he's also the ranking member on the Finance Committee in Parliament. Joining me in the studio is the PRO for the Okada Riders Association, because as I mentioned earlier, this scheme is supposed to benefit them as well. And Solomon Akpanaba is a PRO for the Okada Riders Association. Solomon, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm fine.
Do you understand what the scheme is about?
Yes, please.
Okay. What's your understanding of it?
My understanding is that to just talk about their general policy for the Okada riders, I think they want to reset the riders industry. They want to reset the motorbike industry. So the social, the SNET scheme is going to also help us contribute towards our retirement benefits.
Is this something that your members are happy about?
Oh, sure. Everybody is happy about it. Who wouldn't like to benefit something financially when he's finally weak and cannot do what he used to do to earn a living? So everybody is happy. We are only praying that they should come to power, and when they come, they will actually do what they are saying.
Is the Okada riders in support of John Dramani Mahama? Are you campaigning for him?
Yes, of course. We are solidly behind the NDC, and we are campaigning for them simply because other parties don't have...
Do all your members feel the same way about what you're saying?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Because other parties don't want us to come closer to them, and it is clear in their manifestos, their day-to-day activities with the ordinary Ghanaians. You can see that it is only NDC which is always consistent with policies that include our survival, our concerns, and our activities as Ghanaians. They always include us in everything they do, unlike other political parties. So we feel that it is only the NDC that consider us to be part of Ghanaians, and therefore who don't like to belong to where he feel welcomed. So that is our position.
Right. Thank you very much. Solomon Akpanaba is a PRO for the Okada Riders Association, and he says they are very happy about the scheme to include them, to contribute some amount of money so that when they retire, they can have something to live on. And the Okada riders are very happy with this, and they are fully in support of John Dramani Mahama, and you hope that he becomes president in 2025, right? Thank you very much. Let's now bring you the latest in the world of sport with Mrs. Bukari. Yes, I said that sports was on afterwards, but let me bring you business news first. The Vice President and presidential candidate of the NPP, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has disclosed that there was a 50% reduction in import duties between 2019 and 2021. According to him, this would have continued were it not for the economic hardship starting from 2022. His comments come on the back of concerns raised by importers and exporters about shouldering numerous charges at the ports, which erode their gains.
In our first term, we abolished and reduced 21 separate taxes, and we reduced import duties by 50% between 2019 and 2021. 50% reduction in import duties. And that, of course, we had to go back on that when we got into the crisis. We're going to bring in a flat rate in cedis. So if you are bringing in spare parts and there's a 40-foot container of spare parts, you will know exactly what the duty is for the spare parts, say 20,000 cedis or 15,000 cedis or 30,000 cedis. It's a flat rate. So when the 40-foot container arrives of the spare parts, then you know you will pay 40,000. If you are bringing in second-hand clothing, and that is attracting 20,000 cedis duty, you will know beforehand that it will come. It's not that it will arrive and then the price will change.
Let's get some answers. Executive Secretary, actually the President of the Importers and Exporters Association, Samson Asaki Awingobit, has dismissed claims by the Vice President that the government has reduced taxes at the port through the introduction of the benchmark value in 2019. Dr. Bawumia, who is also the NPP's flag bearer, stated during a media engagement that the government had implemented tax reforms to make the port more competitive for importers. However, in response to these claims, Samson Asaki clarified that there was no tax reduction in 2019. Instead, he explained that the government opted to accept transactional values from importers after concerns were raised by the business community.
That wasn't a tax reduction. And that is why, if you care to know, that is why when they were doing that, the government could not go to Parliament to ask for any tax reduction. So I was even overwhelmed when, at the time they were reversing the payment values, they went to Parliament to announce it. So I was even expecting any of the MPs to rise up and ask that is illegal thing that because they didn't know about it. It was announced in one of the College of Surgeons without a request to Parliament, simply because there was nothing like 1% or 2% tax reduction. But he said something strangely yesterday, fascinating, very fascinating, that I call it, and I think we should take this by very well. He said all the taxes that he's promising that when he comes, he will scrap it off. It's not up to 3%. But he said when he comes, he will cut off certain expenditure up to 3%. You remember, fiscal discipline. And that he said that so all the tax that he says mentioned at 1%, COVID levy, e-levy, what that he mentioned them, that he abolish them, is not even up to 1%. That he said it was 0 point something. It's not up to 1%. So point is, if you knew very well that the taxes that we have been crying that take off COVID levy, take off e-levy, take off import special levy, take off what, and it was less than 0%, and you refused. You knew that it's not less than, it's not even up to 1%. Yet, you couldn't advise the government of the day, your own government, to abolish those things. Even a practical one that we were mentioning, that when you became the flag bearer, he's saying, I'm not going to say that it's a doomsayer, I'm not a doomsayer, I'm not going to say that it's a scam, but I think that we have heard more speeches, more than this, more promises, moving us from taxation to production.
The presidential candidate of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama, has pledged to abolish what he describes as draconian taxes within the first 90 days in office if elected in the incoming 2024 general elections. Among the taxes that he plans to eliminate are the controversial e-levy, the COVID levy, the 10% tax on betting winnings, and the emissions levy. Speaking at the launch of the NDC's 2024 manifesto in Winneba, John Mahama emphasized that these measures are aimed at alleviating economic hardships and reducing the high cost of doing businesses in Ghana. Let's have a conversation on this. GHOne Ayi-Owu is partner at for tax and regulatory services at Deloitte. Thank you very much for joining us, GHOne. How feasible are these promises to scrap these taxes?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. And the issue is that there are two things to consider here. Ghana is currently under the IMF conditionalities. Hello?
Yes, GHOne, I can hear you. Hello, GHOne. Unfortunately, we lost GHOne. GHOne is a partner for tax and regulatory services at Deloitte. We apologize for that. We'll try and rework the lines and have that conversation with. On his own, the Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram, Samuel Neto George, has praised the NPP's Year of Return and Beyond the Return initiatives as feasible and productive. However, he contends that the execution of this initiative was inadequate and that they did not significantly impact the entertainment economy as expected. He spoke with me earlier on GH Today and noted that the initiative lacked the ability to extensively factor local destinations and festivities.
I will be the last person to say that the Year of Return and Beyond the Return initiatives have not been a very good thing for Ghana. I mean, in that space, I would say that the idea, the concept, extremely commendable. Execution, we could have done it better. Because you look at some of the numbers that we see and the push through that comes through the country in December, and why we've restricted it to a December thing. We could have expanded the Year of Return and Beyond the Return to go beyond just the December raves, because you've got the Easter, which is very big in Kwewu. You realize that the Kwewu thing has not been factored into the whole diaspora return and Ghana being a tourism destination thing, one. Two, you also realize that we've got a number of festivals. You've got Odura, you've got Abuachire, you've got Homowo, you've got Asafotufiam. A lot of this festival. So what you should actually be seeing, and that's why I'm saying that you don't have, execution hasn't been the best under this government. And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing.
And now let's bring you international news. Diseases have begun to spread in parts of coastal Gaza as open sewage runs through camps through the beach. Satellite images show waters on parts of Gaza's Mediterranean coastline have started turning brown as health experts warn of the spread of open sewage and diseases across the territory. Aside from the pollution-related diseases, heat and water crisis has led to an outbreak of skin infections, particularly among children. The sewage discharge in the images captured on 2nd August covered an area of over 2 square kilometers, 0.8 square miles. Satellite images show the discharge first started appearing in June and that it grew steadily over the next 2 months. It is not clear if the coastal pollution is still growing, as more recent satellite images are not available. Intensive Israeli bombardment has led to the collapse of Gaza's wastewater management infrastructure, a UN environmental report concluded in June. And that's it for the news. On behalf of the entire production team, thank you very much for your time. The news team will be back at 6:30 with News Tonight. I am Serwaa. Have a good afternoon.